So we're done with acids, bases, and buffers, and we're also done with inorganic chemistry review. So let's have a review on organic chem. So the important important concepts that you need to review for organic chem that are applicable in biochem are the functional groups. So we have different functional groups in organics. So we have hydroxyl group. This is OH. Okay, so an example is ethanol. Now, these hydroxyl groups are present in carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and lipids. Carbonyl, so you have aldehydes, ketones, diba? So these are present in carbohydrates and in nucleic acids. You have carboxyl, diba? You have, for example, acetic acid. These are present in proteins and lipids. And then amino group, you have SH group, you have phosphate, and you have methyl. So these are the important functional groups that you need to understand and in organic, because kini sila mao ni ang present. These are present in these are present in biochem. So these things are what composes the cell. Okay, so these are functional groups that you find inside the body. So basically, the human body is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and other elements that that are bonded together differently. Okay, they're just bonded differently para lain-lain ang ilang function, lain-lain ang ilang structure. But what we are inside the body, the elements inside the body are just these things. We are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. Okay, those are the main elements present in the body, and you have to understand. You have to know these functional groups. Okay, because this is what composes the carbohydrates, the biomolecules. Okay, so we have 4 macromolecules. We have carbohydrates, nucleic acids, proteins, and lipids. Okay, so for carbohydrates, we have starch and glycogen. For example, we have cellulose also. So ang main function of carbohydrates are energy storage, and they also function as structural support. For nucleic acids, we know this is for gene expression. Proteins, well, catalysis mostly and support. And then lipids, these are also form of energy storage, just like carbohydrates, and they're also the main component of cell membranes. Okay, so these are the general this is the general reaction present in biochem. So we have constructing molecules and breaking molecules. Those are the processes that are happening inside the body. So if we are constructing, so meaning gikan sa duha ka molecules, we need to remove water. So this one, we need to remove water, which means dehydrate, kay gitangtangan og water, to form a single molecule. And then if we break a molecule, so gikan sa single padong sa duha ka molecules, for example, we need to add water, which means to hydrolyze. Okay, so in constructing, we need to dehydrate, and in breaking, we need to hydrolyze. Okay, so that's just removing water and adding water. Now, let's proceed with carbohydrates. So this is the first major biomolecule that we'll discuss. So carbohydrate is the most abundant of the 4 macromolecules. And the purpose of carbohydrate range from energy storage to structural components. Okay, so for example, we have the starch grains in a chloroplast. So starch is composed of a polymer, this polymer. So the monomer of these are these monosaccharides, the glucose. Okay, so the glucose, mao ni usa ni ka glucose ang usa ka hexagon. So this is one monomer, another monomer, and this is linked by glycosidic linkage. So the bond that links one monomer to another is called a glycosidic bond. Okay, so this is the polymer. Okay, it's composed of several monosaccharide units. Okay, and this is called a polysaccharide. monosaccharides can be classified according to functional group. So we have aldoses for aldehyde nga functional group and ketoses for ketone nga functional group. So for example, glyceraldehyde is an aldose because ang functional group niya is aldehyde. So remember nga ang aldehyde is R C double bond O niya H. So ang nakabond sa carbonyl is an R group. So this is the R group and this is the H. Okay? For ketone, like dihydroxyacetone, it's a ketone because ang nakabond niya is R C double bond O R. So ang nakabond sa carbonyl group is R and R. Okay? So that's this one or this one. This could be R or R prime, meaning it could be different, like this one, di ba? Lahi nga R. So these are called ketones. Now, monosaccharides can also be classified according to the number of carbons. So we have triose, pentose, hexose, we also have tetrose, heptose, okay? So, for example, glyceraldehyde is a triose because it has 3 carbons. So we have 1, 2, 3. Diba? So that's why it's called a triose. Same with the hydroxyacetone. And pentose, 5. Ribose is a pentose because it has 5 carbons. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Now, if you combine these classifications, glyceraldehyde is called an aldotriose because it's an aldose and a triose. So that's why it's called an aldotriose. Ribose is called an aldopentose. Dihydroxyacetone is called a ketotriose. Ribulose is called a ketopentose. Okay, that's how you name, that's how you classify monosaccharides. Okay. Now, if you search in Google, diba, you search for the structure of glucose, and then the structure of glucose gives you different structures. Linear, and then you have this ring form. So actually, class, ang ring form, this exists in solution, meaning if it's dissolved in water. So this is the structure. Both structures are correct, but this one is the structure in solution. Okay, so how do you form this ring structure? Gikan sa straight chain conformation. So what happens here, class, is that this carbon, ang carbonyl nga carbon, this one, carbon number 1. So you start naming the carbon from the functional group. So diba, this is an aldehyde functional group. This is the functional group. And so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So how do you form this ring conformation? The carbonyl carbon, kini nga carbon, mubond siya with the oxygen sa, this is called the penultimate carbon because it's the second sa ultimate nga carbon. Okay, this is the penultimate carbon. So sa oxygen nga nakabond sa penultimate carbon. So that's why this will form a ring here. Okay? So mani ang carbon sa carbonyl niya oxygen sa carbon number 5. This is carbon number 5. This is the OH in carbon number 5. Okay? So that's carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ang carbon 6, this thing here, this whole thing becomes a substituent. Okay? Dili siya mapart sa ring. And then this OH, diba? Mabond siya sa carbon. So, remember nga, ang oxygen makabond only up to 2 bonds. Diba? Duha raman ka bond ang kaya sa oxygen. So, since na naman siya tulo ka bond, once it bonds with C, diba? Tulo na yung bond. So, that means ang H will leave. So, this will float in solution as H+. And then ang carbon also can also accommodate just 4 bonds. 4. So, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which means, ang kining usa ka double bond sa oxygen has to become a lone pair here. So, ma-negative ni ang oxygen. So, since you have a negative charge here niya, na kay H plus floating in solution, that's why you have OH. Mo attract sila. Okay? Mo bond ang H dire. That is why you have OH here. And, what differs the alpha and beta glucose? So, kung nasa ubos ang OH, it's called alpha glucose. And if kung nasa babaw, it's called a beta glucose. Okay? So, in organic chem, the carbons are labeled from carbon number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, don't forget nga, this is carbon number 1. This is carbon number 5 here. So if you form disaccharide, so disaccharide meaning that's 2. Di means 2. Tri means 3. Okay. So if you form disaccharide, it means from 2 monosaccharide units. So again, if it's constructing, you need to dehydrate. You need to remove water. So you need to remove these 2 to form a disaccharide because now you're constructing a bond. Okay. Now, that means mabilin diri ang oxygen, di ba? Kay gitangtangan man nimo og water, gitangtang na nimo. What you call this bond from between 2 monosaccharide units is called a glycosidic linkage or a glycosidic bond. And ang kining 1,4 means the number of carbon. This describes the number of carbon. So this is carbon number 1 of this molecule and this is carbon number 4 of this molecule. That's why it's called a 1,4 glycosidic linkage. Okay, in this case, it's 1,2 because this is carbon number 2 and carbon number 1 here. That's why it's called a 1,2 glycosidic linkage. Okay. For polysaccharides, you have alpha glucose. So, for example, this is we have starch. So, the starch is composed of amylose and amylopectin. So, it's a combination of amylose and amylopectin. So, ang amylose class, they are all alpha glucose. So, these are alpha glucose in 1,4 linkages. So, these are alpha 1,4 nga glycosidic linkage. These are alpha glucose linked together by alpha 1,4. And so, amylose is straight chain ra. Okay? It's just all kanang straight ra. For amylopectin, it's branched. So, still alpha glucose and then it's still alpha 1,4 here. Ang bond is still alpha 1,4 glycosidic linkage. But when it reaches this branching point, na siya branching point, di ba? Kaya ni branch man siya dire. So, when it reaches this branching point has alpha 1,6 glycosidic linkage. Okay? It's now at alpha 1,6 and then kung balik na sad siya sa straight, alpha 1,4 na sad, alpha 1,4. Okay? So, this is the structure of amylopectin. Now, starch, as you know, this is for plants. Now, for animals, we have glycogen, ang corresponding sa animals. So, ang glycogen is the energy storage for animals. It's still alpha glucose, same as amylopectin actually. Ang difference nila is that amylopectin is less branched. So, ang glycogen is more highly branched compared to amylopectin. But the same ra nga alpha glucose, same nga 1,4 here, 1,4 glycosidic linkage, 1,4. But when it reaches branching, this is 1,6 and then goes back to 1,4. And when it reaches branching, it's 1,6, 1,4, 1,6, 1,4. Like that. Okay? So, kung straight ra gani siya, it's 1,4 but it's in branching, nasa alpha 1,6 ang glycosidic linkage. Meaning, it's this linkage. Carbon number 1 and the carbon number 6. Okay, that's the linkage. Now, another example of polysaccharide is cellulose. So, ang cellulose, ang function niya is a structural component. Diba? So, what this figure shows is that mao ni ang structure sa cellulose. That's the beta 1,4 linkages. Because it's beta glucose, that's why it's beta 1,4. So, what this means is that you just have, what this figure shows is that it reflects the structure. The structure of cellulose, diba? This is the structure of cellulose. It's linear like this. And it reflects the microscopic structure. See, it's really structural. So, that's composed of cellulose molecules, cellulose. Okay? So, it's the same thing. This is cellulose. We have microfibril and the cellulose molecules. Okay? So, this is how the cellulose are arranged in these cellulose fibers. Another example is chitin. So, chitin is a carbohydrate. It's glucose, but instead of OH here, it's replaced with an amide. So, this is the structure of chitin. It's actually a modified glucose. Now, remember, ang chitin is present in shells. crab shells og sa shells pud ani in the exoskeleton of arthropods. So imagine kung unsa kagahi ang structure sa chitin, di ba? How strong this is. So in fact, ang chitin is used to make a strong thread. So thread sa surgical incisions. Kay ang iya pong advantage is that they decompose. The chitin decomposes once the wound or the incision heals. Okay? Then